The Galactic Empire had ruled the stars for centuries. Their fleets were massive, their planets well protected, and their technology far beyond what most species could even imagine. The leaders of the Empire believed they were untouchable. Across countless systems, everyone knew that if the Empire declared war, no one could stand against them. Their confidence was absolute. Soldiers, commanders, and politicians alike walked with pride, believing the galaxy was theirs to control. Life for the Empire's citizens and officers was orderly. Trade routes were secure, colonies were loyal, and the Empire's laws were enforced strictly. No one dared oppose them openly. Many had grown so used to this control that even whispers of rebellion were rare and usually dismissed. For the Empire, threats seemed distant and irrelevant. After all, how could any species, any group of humans, or any lone warship challenge their might? It was almost laughable to think about it. Yet, far from the heart of the Empire, reports began to trickle in. Scouts patrolling the outer edges of known space occasionally mentioned sightings. One or two humans traveling in a vessel, unlike anything previously recorded. Some reports described the ship as old and battered, but strangely powerful. Others claimed it was so enormous it could crush a small cruiser with ease. These accounts reached the Empire's Central Council. Some officials ignored them, laughing quietly at the overactive imaginations of distant observers. Others frowned, sensing something unusual. But no one acted immediately. Humans had long been considered a primitive species. Their technology was simple compared to the Empire's. They were known to be aggressive, stubborn, and dangerous when cornered, but always limited in scope. Empires had risen and fallen on the humans' home planet, yet nothing in the records suggested they could ever challenge a galactic-scale power. For decades, the Empire had assumed the humans were contained. Like a wildfire trapped in a valley. The humans' homeworld was harsh. Wars had torn it apart, and entire civilizations had been forced to rebuild from ruins multiple times. This had created a society toughened by suffering and conflict. They had learned to survive against impossible odds, to adapt when every path seemed blocked. These qualities were rare in the galaxy, but the Empire's leaders never truly understood their significance. They had watched the humans' struggles as a distant spectacle, never realizing the lessons the humans had learned would one day reach far beyond their home planet. One morning, an Imperial scouting fleet reported something different. The transmission came from a sensor outpost near an asteroid belt on the edge of Imperial space. The officer in charge sounded unusually tense. "We see a human vessel," he said. "It is moving toward the system with no communication, no identification. It appears ... hostile." The word hostile caused a stir. The council convened quickly. High-ranking officers and leaders gathered in a massive chamber aboard the Empire's Central Command ship. Screens lit up the room, showing the human vessel approaching on long-range sensors. At first, the council members studied the data, trying to dismiss it as a mistake. Their analysts double-checked the readings. The ship was real. Its size, power output, and speed were unlike anything the Empire had cataloged for humans. It moved, not like a simple cargo or exploration vessel, but like a weapon built to destroy. Still, many leaders were skeptical. "It cannot be," one of them said. "Humans do not have technology capable of this scale. Their history proves it." Another nodded. "Perhaps it is only one ship. Perhaps it is old. We can handle a single vessel." The room hummed with confidence, but a quiet unease began to spread beneath the surface. Meanwhile, the humans were not waiting. Their ship moved with purpose, silent and relentless, as if it understood exactly what it needed to do. It was not fast in the conventional sense, but it was precise, always on the correct trajectory, never hesitating. Sensors couldn't predict its behavior fully, and Imperial pilots began to feel frustrated. They had spent centuries mastering strategy, tactics, and war. Yet this human ship moved unpredictably, almost instinctively, in ways that confounded even the most experienced commanders. Reports from the front lines began to arrive in fragmented bursts. Scouts who had been sent to observe the human ship described its appearance in fearful tones. It looked jagged, almost monstrous, with angles and protrusions that seemed built to intimidate. The hull bore scars from countless battles, yet it appeared unharmed by the vacuum of space and the radiation that often tore through lesser vessels. Energy emissions were off the charts, but no one could determine how they were generated or controlled. The council grew increasingly anxious. Their confidence began to crack. What if this was more than a single ship? What if humans had built an entire fleet in secret? The thought was dismissed almost as quickly as it appeared. Yet no one could shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. In the colonies closest to the human ship's path, governors reported unusual readings. Communications had been disrupted in several areas, and small patrol ships sent to intercept the humans were not returning. Panic began to ripple through these outposts. The humans did not send messages, did not negotiate, and did not retreat. They simply advanced. The Empire had never faced an enemy that ignored diplomacy so completely. The Council ordered reinforcements. A full strike fleet would be assembled to intercept the human vessel before it reached the inner systems. But even as orders were given, officers whispered doubts to one another. Have we underestimated them? Some asked. Others rejected the fear, insisting that the humans were still bound by their primitive minds and instincts. They may be reckless, one officer said. We are methodical. We cannot fail. Yet deep down, a tension lingered. The human's warship was not just a machine. It felt alive in some way. The way it moved, the way it seemed to anticipate, suggested something more than mere engineering. Some whispered that it had been designed to instill fear, to terrify before attacking. Others dismissed such talk as superstition. But the unease persisted. Even within the council chamber, debates grew heated. Some argued that the humans should be destroyed immediately, while others suggested observation, trying to understand what they were dealing with. But every delay, every hesitation felt dangerous. The humans did not pause. They came closer to Imperial territory steadily, and the sense of an impending storm grew palpable. Outside the walls of command, soldiers prepared for the unknown. Squadrons were briefed, crews were trained, and weapons were checked repeatedly. Still, a silent fear hovered over everyone. For the first time in centuries, the Empire felt vulnerable. The idea that a single human warship could challenge their might was nearly impossible to accept. Yet every report confirmed it. As the day ended, the Council reconvened to discuss their final strategy. They assumed the humans would soon reach the outskirts of the inner system. They assumed a battle would soon be inevitable. And yet, no one could predict exactly what they would face. The humans were still distant, but the shadow of the warship loomed large in every mind. For the citizens of the Empire, life went on in a semblance of normalcy. Yet whispers spread through the colonies, rumors of a monstrous human vessel that could not be stopped. Traders avoided the asteroid belts, patrols doubled their watch, and every sensor was trained toward the incoming threat. Fear became the silent companion of all, though the full scale of what was coming could not yet be imagined. The humans, meanwhile, moved onward without concern for the Empire's confidence or fear. Their warship was a silent predator in the void, straight from the horrors of their past, shaped by survival and battle. And so, the first chapter of what would become a galactic nightmare unfolded, not with a declaration, not with diplomacy, but with the simple, unstoppable approach of a human warship that the Empire was utterly unprepared to face. It was the calm before the storm. And soon, everything the Empire thought it knew about power, war, and fear would be shattered. The first encounter changed everything. What had seemed like a distant threat now became terrifyingly real. The Empire's scouting fleet, sent to observe the human warship, did not return as expected. Hours turned into days with no word. Anxiety spread across the command centers. The officers who had once dismissed the reports as exaggeration now faced the undeniable truth. The humans were here, and they were nothing like anyone had imagined. The first glimpses of the ship were terrifying. Pilots described it in whispers, their voices trembling over communications. It was enormous, larger than any Imperial cruiser, and its design was unlike anything recorded in the Empire's archives. Jagged surfaces, unusual shapes, and strange energy readings made it look more like a creature than a machine. The human warship did not resemble any conventional military vessel. It had the appearance of something built to instill fear. Every surface, every protrusion, seemed purposeful, as though it had been designed to project power and chaos. What struck the Imperial officers most was its movement. The ship did not follow standard flight patterns. It did not maneuver in the way conventional vessels did. It did not rely on speed alone. Instead, it moved deliberately, almost intelligently, as though it could anticipate what the enemy would do before they even did it. Commanders watching the screens felt a creeping sense of dread. The humans were not simply aggressive. They were precise, controlled, and terrifyingly effective. When the fleet finally made contact, the humans attacked without hesitation. There were no warnings, no attempts at communication, nothing that would allow the Empire to prepare. One moment the Imperial vessels were scanning and analyzing, the next they were under fire. The first volley hit like a storm, tearing through shields and hulls with pinpoint accuracy. Entire squads were obliterated. In moments, the humans moved as if they had studied every weakness, every blind spot in the fleet's formation. What the Empire expected to be a minor skirmish quickly turned into a nightmare. Reports from survivors described the humans in ways that seemed almost unbelievable. They were relentless, showing no fear, no hesitation. Even when their own ships sustained damage, they continued to press the attack. Some survivors described the humans as cold, mechanical in their determination, yet somehow alive with a brutal intelligence that no one could fully understand. It was as if the humans had been forged in fire, shaped to survive impossible odds. And now they brought that experience into space. The Empire's leaders were unprepared for this level of efficiency and ruthlessness. Traditional strategies failed. Every formation, every tactic the commanders tried was anticipated and countered with terrifying precision. The humans were not just fighting, they were teaching a lesson, and the message was clear. Underestimating them would be catastrophic. Amid the chaos, the Imperial Council scrambled to understand what they were facing. Analysts studied the sensors, trying to find weaknesses, patterns, anything that could give them an advantage. But the data was baffling. The human ship emitted energy, unlike anything the Empire had cataloged. Weapons that were supposed to destroy were absorbed or redirected. Shields that were supposed to fail remained intact. It was as if the humans had mastered technology in ways the Empire could not comprehend. Back in the colonies near the encounter, the fear was palpable. Citizens had grown used to Imperial control and protection, but now even they realized that something far beyond their understanding was at work. Rumors spread quickly, and every transmission from the front lines carried news of destruction and death. Traders avoided the region entirely, fearing that even accidental encounters with the humans could be fatal. Military outposts doubled patrols, but no amount of preparation seemed sufficient. On board the human ship, there was no sign of hesitation. The humans did not communicate with the Empire, and they did not attempt to negotiate. Their actions were deliberate, and singular in purpose. Every attack, every maneuver, seemed to have been calculated to maximize both damage and fear. They did not aim to take prisoners or negotiate surrender. They aimed to dominate, to assert their presence with absolute clarity. The humans' actions left no room for doubt. The Empire was facing a force unlike any other. The first human attack left the Empire in shock. Entire squadrons of ships were destroyed in minutes. Pilots who survived described scenes of chaos and terror. They spoke of a ship that seemed to anticipate every move, striking where it would cause the most damage with the least effort. They spoke of explosions that left wreckage scattered across space, of debris that floated like ghosts of the fallen. And they spoke of the humans themselves, relentless and unyielding, appearing as though the horrors of their past battles had been distilled into this single vessel. The Imperial Council convened. Immediately after the reports came in, fear replaced confidence in the room. High-ranking officers debated strategies, but no consensus emerged. Some argued for immediate retaliation, insisting that overwhelming force could crush the humans. Others advised caution, pointing out that traditional tactics had already failed catastrophically. The debate grew heated, revealing cracks in the Empire's confidence that no one had ever seen before. Meanwhile, the human warship did not slow its advance. Sensors showed it moving steadily toward the inner systems, striking at minor fleets. Along the way, the humans did not pause, did not retreat, did not communicate. They advanced with a terrifying calm, as if the destruction they caused was only the beginning. Every move sent ripples of fear through the Empire's officers and citizens alike. It became clear that this was not a random attack. The humans were deliberate, calculated, and unstoppable by conventional measures, even the most experienced. Commanders felt a sense of helplessness. They had trained for every conceivable scenario, yet nothing in their experience could prepare them for what they faced. The humans operated outside conventional rules of engagement. They did not follow logic or patterns that the Empire could predict. Every attempt to intercept or block the ship ended in failure, and the losses mounted with each encounter. The human warship seemed almost alive, responding to threats with a precision that was almost supernatural. Pilots who survived described a sense of being watched, of the ship anticipating their every move. Some officers whispered that the humans had developed a form of strategy that went beyond calculation, something instinctive and terrifyingly efficient. Others dismissed it as imagination, but even the skeptics could not deny the results. The humans were reshaping the battlefield with every move, leaving the Empire scrambling to react. By the time the first major engagement ended, the Empire's confidence had crumbled. What had begun as disbelief now became full-scale panic. Fleets that had once been symbols of imperial power lay in ruins. Commanders who had once been confident were now second-guessing every decision. Reports of human attacks filled the communications networks, each one more horrifying than the last. The Empire realized, too late, that they had underestimated not just the human strength, but their adaptability and ruthlessness. The human warship had arrived like a storm no one could predict. It did not speak, it did not negotiate, and it did not tire. It simply existed as a force of destruction, born from centuries of human struggle and survival. Every report, every encounter, made it clearer that the humans were something the Empire had never faced before. They were not just dangerous, they were unstoppable. As the first battle ended, the survivors returned to Imperial command, shaken and exhausted. They described scenes of horror and chaos, of ships destroyed in ways that defied explanation. They described the humans as relentless, unfeeling, and terrifyingly effective. The Empire's leaders could no longer dismiss the threat. They had faced enemies before, but nothing like this. The humans had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. Even as the Empire began to regroup, fear had taken root. Citizens, officers, and politicians alike whispered of the human warship as if it were a living nightmare. The first encounter had shattered confidence, leaving doubt and terror in its place. The humans were no longer just another species to dominate. They were a force that could destroy fleets and crush morale with ease. The story of the first encounter spread quickly across the Empire. Everyone knew about the humans now. Every commander, every soldier, every citizen understood that a new kind of threat had arrived. And yet, despite the fear, the humans themselves did not pause. They advanced relentlessly, silently, without hesitation. The Empire had glimpsed the power of a species forged in horrors, a species capable of turning survival into an art of destruction. For the first time, the Empire understood that they had underestimated humanity. They had assumed humans were primitive, limited, and predictable. They had been wrong. The humans were not only capable of fighting, they were capable of redefining what war meant in the galaxy. The first encounter had made that terrifyingly clear, and the Empire could only watch and prepare, knowing that their confidence and control had been shattered. The first encounter with the human warship had shaken the Galactic Empire to its core. Entire fleets had been lost, experienced officers were questioning their abilities, and the confidence that had once defined the Empire was replaced by fear. The Council convened immediately to reassess the situation. Reports were grim, fragmented, and horrifying. Screens lit up with sensor data showing wreckage, drifting debris, and the occasional survivor, barely alive, who spoke of the humans as if they were monsters. The Council had never experienced anything like this. Usually, threats could be managed with strategy, firepower, or intimidation. The humans had proven that none of these methods would work. They did not communicate, they did not hesitate, and they did not fight like other species. Each movement was precise, almost instinctual, like a predator studying its prey. Traditional tactics failed again and again, leaving the Empire scrambling for answers. The council chambers were tense. High-ranking officers argued loudly, trying to establish a strategy. Some insisted on immediate retaliation with the Empire's largest fleets, believing that overwhelming numbers could crush the human ship. Others warned that more attacks would only lead to further losses. "We do not understand them," one officer said, voice shaking slightly. "Every attempt we make is anticipated. They are not just strong, they are unpredictable. They are dangers beyond anything we have seen." Despite these warnings, there was no alternative. The humans were advancing, and the Empire could not afford to retreat indefinitely. Every moment of delay allowed the humans to approach the inner systems, where more vulnerable planets and colonies waited. The Council reluctantly authorized the assembly of a massive strike force, a fleet larger than any previously deployed. It would be the Empire's greatest show of force, meant to crush the humans once and for all. Preparations were frantic. Officers coordinated fleets, stockpiled weapons, and briefed pilots repeatedly. Engineers worked around the clock to enhance shields, armor, and weapon systems. Every ship was checked, double-checked, and triple-checked. Yet despite all this effort, there was a quiet anxiety that no preparation could remove. Veterans whispered about the humans' relentless efficiency. "They strike where it hurts most," one pilot said. "They don't just fight, they destroy hope, confidence, and everything in between." On board the human warship, there was no sign of hesitation. Sensors picked up movement and energy readings that made Imperial officers uneasy. The humans did not wait for the Empire to act. They advanced silently, deliberately, and with terrifying precision. There was no communication, no negotiation, no warning, only the steady, unstoppable approach of a vessel forged from centuries of survival and conflict. It was as if the horrors of the humans' past had been distilled into this single machine, a predator in the vast emptiness of space. When the fleets finally engaged, the humans struck with brutal efficiency. Imperial squadrons attempted to form defensive lines, but the humans cut through them like a blade through paper. Shields failed where they were thought strongest, and weapons designed to destroy large ships barely made a scratch. Pilots described the humans' attacks as almost surgical, hitting the exact points necessary to cause maximum destruction with minimal effort. The humans were not reckless. They were precise, efficient, and terrifyingly effective. The battle was chaotic. Explosions lit the void, sending debris spiraling in every direction. Pilots tried desperately to adapt, but the humans always seemed one step ahead. Some reported seeing the human vessel anticipate maneuvers before they were even executed. Others described it as if the ship had a mind of its own, a presence that understood instinctively how to destroy anything in its path. Even the most confident officers were left doubting their own abilities. Meanwhile, the council watched the battle unfold on monitors, their faces pale. They had sent what they believed to be the Empire's strongest fleet, yet the humans were dismantling it piece by piece. Strategies that had worked for centuries were useless. The humans did not fight like anyone else. They did not follow conventional tactics. Their attacks were not random. They were calculated, relentless, and horrifyingly effective. Reports from survivors trickled in slowly. They spoke of humans who did not hesitate, who did not show fear, and who fought with an almost inhuman efficiency. Even when their ships were damaged, they pressed the attack. Some pilots described a sense of dread, of being watched, of their enemies understanding their thoughts before they acted. It was as if the humans had evolved to survive impossible odds, carrying the experience of countless battles into every encounter. The council tried to devise a new plan, but uncertainty hung over every decision. The humans were not just physically powerful, they were psychologically daunting. Every attack left the survivors traumatized. Every engagement shattered confidence. And every encounter reminded the Empire that they had underestimated humans in ways they could never recover from. The humans were not only a threat, they were a lesson in the consequences of underestimating an opponent. Even as the fleets regrouped, the humans continued their advance. Reports from outer systems described colonies on high alert, defensive, weapons being readied, and citizens fleeing as best they could. The humans did not target civilians, but their presence alone caused panic. The Empire had relied on fear and intimidation to control the galaxy. Yet they found themselves on the other side of that fear for the first time. The first encounters revealed something else that troubled the Council. The humans were adaptable. They responded to every tactic, every maneuver, and every weapon system with efficiency. If the Empire changed its approach, the humans adjusted immediately. There was no hesitation, no trial and error, only precise, calculated action. It was as if they had learned from every battle humans had ever fought, using centuries of survival and conflict to create a strategy the Empire could not anticipate. As the humans pushed deeper into Imperial space, panic spread through the ranks. Officers argued about how to respond. Commanders questioned their own decisions, and the Council faced a crisis unlike any before. They were used to being in control, used to having the upper hand, and used to being feared. Now they were confronted with a species that could not be intimidated, a species that would not stop, and a species that seemed to thrive on the challenge of survival itself. The humans' presence forced the Empire to reconsider everything. Their previous confidence, their assumption of superiority, and their trust in strategy, all were shattered. They had faced many enemies before, but none had been like this. The humans were not merely aggressive. They were relentless, precise, and terrifyingly efficient. Every encounter left survivors shaken, fleets damaged, and the Council scrambling for answers. Even in the aftermath of the first battles, the humans did not pause. They continued to advance through space, striking only when necessary, and maintaining a presence that unsettled every observer. Sensors recorded their movements, weapon systems were tested against them, and strategies were revised again and again, but nothing worked. The humans were not bound by the same rules as other species. They fought differently, thought differently, and survived differently. The Empire's confidence was gone. What had once been a galaxy under control now felt vulnerable. Citizens whispered about the human warship as if it were a living nightmare. Soldiers feared encounters, even in simulations. And the Council, faced with the relentless efficiency of the humans, realized they were confronting a force they could not understand fully, a species shaped by horrors they had never experienced, and a warship that embodied everything terrifying about human survival. The first encounter had ended, but the aftermath was worse. Losses were severe, morale was low, and confidence was shattered. The Empire had always believed that knowledge, technology, and strategy would keep them safe. They had believed that no species could threaten them. Now they faced proof that those beliefs were wrong. The humans were not just strong, they were unstoppable, relentless, and shaped by a past filled with conflict and survival. As the Council continued to debate their next steps, officers and citizens alike felt a growing dread. The humans had shown them what true determination and adaptability looked like. They had revealed the weaknesses in the Empire's overconfidence. And most importantly, they had demonstrated that survival in the face of impossible odds could create a force that no one could predict, no one could control, and no one could easily defeat. The Empire had entered a new era. For the first time, they understood that humans were not just another species. They were a challenge unlike any other. The first encounter had ended, but the story of the human warship was just beginning. And as the humans moved steadily forward, silent, precise, and terrifyingly efficient, the Empire realized that the balance of power in the galaxy had already begun to shift. The Galactic Empire had survived countless wars, toppled rebellious colonies, and faced enemies that had seemed unstoppable. Yet nothing had prepared them for the humans. After the first encounters, the Council realized that conventional strategies, overwhelming numbers, and advanced technology alone would not be enough. The humans were not just aggressive, they were relentless, precise, and terrifyingly efficient. Determined to regain control, the Council ordered the assembly of the Empire's largest fleet ever deployed. Ships from every corner of the galaxy were summoned. Officers and commanders worked around the clock to organize the massive strike. The fleet was equipped with the most advanced weapons, shields, and sensors available. The idea was simple: overwhelm the humans with sheer numbers and firepower, leave nothing standing, and restore the Empire's reputation. Preparation was intense. Pilots trained relentlessly, engineers enhanced weapon systems, and every ship underwent thorough inspections. Fleet commanders drew battle plans, tested formations, and calculated probabilities down to the smallest detail. For the first time, fear replaced pride. Officers whispered doubts privately, but no one voiced them openly. In public, they projected confidence because fear had always been seen as a weakness in the Empire. As the fleet moved into position, sensors picked up the human warship. It was already near a critical star system, moving silently, deliberately, and without any attempt at communication. The humans were not waiting for the Empire. They were coming, and nothing the Empire had could stop them yet. Pilots and officers stared at the readings in disbelief. The ship was massive, jagged, and almost alive in its movements. Every angle, every protrusion, seemed designed to intimidate and destroy. When the first volley of attacks began, the humans responded with terrifying precision. Imperial weapons fired, energy beams cutting through space, missiles streaking toward the target. But the human warship anticipated almost everything. Shields shimmered and redirected attacks. Weapons seemed to pass harmlessly through gaps in the hull. The humans did not panic, did not hesitate. They struck back with calm efficiency, targeting the weak points of the Empire's fleet. The battle quickly became a nightmare. Entire squadrons were obliterated in minutes. Explosions tore through space, sending debris flying like deadly shrapnel. Pilots who survived described scenes of chaos and terror, where human attacks struck unpredictably, yet always with maximum effect. It was not brute force alone. They used strategy, precision, and a deep understanding of their enemies. Every movement was calculated, and every strike left the Empire reeling. Officers in the command chambers watched in horror. They had assumed that overwhelming force would secure victory. Now, they realized that the humans were not fighting like any other enemy they had faced. They did not act out of fear, caution, or hesitation. They were efficient, ruthless, and unyielding. It was as if the warship itself was alive, understanding the weaknesses of every Imperial vessel and exploiting them without mercy. Even the most experienced commanders struggled to adapt. Orders were given, formations changed, and tactics shifted. But the humans seemed always one step ahead. They did not follow predictable patterns. They did not fight according to conventional rules. The Empire had relied on training, technology, and experience. But all of these advantages were being dismantled in real time. Reports from the battlefield were grim. Survivors spoke of the humans striking with terrifying accuracy, often targeting command ships first to disrupt coordination. Others described the humans moving through the chaos almost calmly, like hunters in their natural environment. Ships that were thought invincible were destroyed in moments. Even small skirmishes left fleets crippled and morale shattered. The psychological impact was as devastating as the physical damage. Imperial officers and pilots began to doubt their own abilities. Fear spread silently through the ranks. Soldiers whispered of the human warship as if it were more than a machine, as if it had a mind of its own. "It anticipates everything," one pilot said quietly. "It knows what we will do before we do it." These statements were met with disbelief, but the results were undeniable. Fleet after fleet fell to the humans' relentless efficiency. Despite mounting losses, the Council refused to retreat. The Empire had never backed down, and they could not allow the humans to reach the inner systems unchecked. Plans were drawn for coordinated strikes, combined fleets, and surprise maneuvers. Every effort was made to catch the humans off guard, yet every plan failed. The humans responded instantly, adapting to new formations and attacks with ease. They were not only powerful, they were flexible, resilient, and unafraid. The human strategy was unlike anything the Empire had seen. They did not rely solely on weapons. They used psychological tactics, movement patterns, and timing to destabilize their enemies. Every strike was calculated to maximize fear, confusion, and destruction. Survivors described the humans' attacks as almost surgical, destroying the most critical targets first, leaving chaos in their wake. It was a method of war designed not just to win battles, but to break the will of anyone who opposed them. As the battle raged, the human warship advanced steadily, never pausing, never hesitating. It struck where the Empire was weakest and withdrew only to reposition perfectly for the next attack. It seemed to understand the battlefield better than any Imperial officer, predicting movements and exploiting every opportunity. The humans did not waste energy, did not panic under pressure, and did not make mistakes. They fought with the calm efficiency of predators who had survived countless wars and were now bringing that experience into space. Even the Empire's most advanced weapons were partially ineffective. Energy beams that had destroyed entire fleets in the past barely scratched the human warship's shields. Missile barrages were intercepted or deflected. Boarding attempts failed before they could even begin. The humans had prepared for every conventional tactic and turned each attack into an advantage. It was a warship that had been designed not just for battle, but for survival against overwhelming odds. The Council's fear grew as reports continued to arrive. Entire fleets had been lost, colonies were on high alert, and citizens whispered of the humans' power in hushed tones. The Empire had long ruled through fear, but now the fear was directed at them. For the first time in centuries, they were no longer untouchable. The humans had shown them what true efficiency, resilience, and ruthlessness could look like. Even as the Empire tried to reorganize and launch another counterattack, the humans were already moving toward new targets. Sensors tracked their precise movements, but no one could predict what they would do next. The humans did not fight like other species. They were not bound by expectations, rules, or hesitation. They moved through space like predators, selecting targets, striking with precision, and leaving destruction in their wake. For Imperial officers, the lesson was terrifying but clear. Humans were not just another species. They were a force shaped by survival, hardened by conflict, and capable of exploiting every weakness. They were not reckless. They were deliberate, adaptive, and terrifyingly effective. Every encounter reinforced the idea that traditional tactics and sheer firepower were meaningless against this relentless enemy. By the end of the engagement, the Empire had suffered massive losses. Entire fleets had been destroyed. Command ships were crippled, and morale was at an all-time low. Officers and soldiers alike began to whisper about the human warship as if it were alive. It was no longer just a vessel. It was a symbol of unstoppable force, a reminder that humans could not be underestimated. The Council faced a grim reality. They had assumed overwhelming numbers and superior technology would secure victory. Instead, they faced proof that the humans were not only strong, but unpredictable, adaptable, and terrifyingly efficient. They had underestimated humans for centuries, and now the consequences were undeniable. The Empire had survived countless wars, but this was different. The humans had arrived, and everything the Empire thought it knew about power, strategy, and control was being challenged. Even after the battle ended, the human warship did not pause. It moved steadily onward, silent, deliberate, and unyielding. The Empire was forced to regroup, rethink strategy, and face the terrifying truth. Humans were not just another enemy. They were an unstoppable force, shaped by survival, resilience, and horrors that no one in the galaxy had experienced. The Empire had lost more than ships in the battle. They had lost confidence, control, and certainty. The humans had proven that brute force and strategy alone were insufficient. They had introduced an entirely new kind of warfare, one that combined precision, adaptability, and psychological dominance. Every officer, pilot, and citizen understood that the balance of power had shifted. Humans were no longer an underestimated species. They were a threat that the Empire could not ignore. The humans' advance through Imperial space had become unstoppable. After countless battles, the Empire's fleets were in ruins, morale was shattered, and the Council faced a reality they could no longer ignore. Entire systems had been threatened. Colonies were on high alert, and citizens whispered of the human warship as if it were a living nightmare. The humans had proven time and again that they were not just another enemy. They were a force shaped by survival, efficiency, and the horrors of their own past. The Council attempted one final strategy, hoping that overwhelming force, combined with ingenuity, could stop the humans. They gathered every remaining fleet, every ship capable of combat, and every officer willing to fight. Plans were drawn, formations carefully calculated, and weapon systems pushed to their limits. Yet even as they prepared, there was an unspoken dread among officers and soldiers alike. They had faced formidable foes before, but nothing like this. The humans did not fight like other species. And now the Empire had to confront the terrifying truth. The humans were beyond predictability. As the fleets moved into position, sensors picked up the human warship approaching. It was larger than any ship they had ever recorded, jagged and scarred with the marks of countless battles. Energy readings were extreme, yet controlled. The humans moved with deliberate precision, a predator in the void of space, silent until they chose to strike. Pilots whispered to one another, voices tight with fear, describing the warship as almost alive, as if it could anticipate their every move. When the battle began, it was more devastating than anyone had imagined. Imperial weapons fired relentlessly, lasers cutting through space, missiles streaking toward the human ship. But the humans countered every attack effortlessly. Shields absorbed energy beams that should have shattered them. Weapons misfired or were deflected. Entire squadrons were destroyed before they could even react. The humans were not reckless. They were precise, calculating, and terrifyingly efficient. Every strike was deliberate, every movement planned, and every reaction executed. With uncanny accuracy, pilots who survived described scenes of chaos that seemed impossible. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes, debris floated through space like ghosts of the fallen, and commands were ignored in the panic of sudden destruction. The human warship seemed to move with instinctive understanding, striking at the most critical points and retreating only to strike again in a new formation. Imperial officers could barely comprehend what they were seeing. Traditional tactics, advanced technology, and overwhelming numbers had all failed. The humans' efficiency was more than physical, it was psychological. Survivors reported feeling a deep sense of dread, as if the humans had anticipated their every fear, every hesitation, and every weakness. They struck not just at ships, but at morale, confidence, and the will to fight. Entire fleets were demoralized before they were destroyed. Officers whispered to one another that the humans' methods were not only advanced, they were terrifyingly intelligent, exploiting the Empire's own strengths against it. The council convened. As the battle raged, desperation in every voice. Leaders argued about whether to continue the fight, to retreat, or to attempt diplomacy, but it was too late. The humans had already shown that they would not negotiate, that they would not pause, and that they could not be intimidated. Every plan the Empire devised was anticipated, every formation countered, every strategy rendered useless. The humans had redefined what war meant in the galaxy, and the Empire could only react. Colonies in the path of the human advance were on high alert. Citizens hid in shelters, watched the skies, and prayed for a miracle. Traders abandoned trade routes, fearing even accidental encounters with the humans. The humans' warship did not target civilians, yet their presence alone created fear and chaos. The Empire had ruled through fear for centuries, but now fear had been turned against them. Citizens who had once felt secure under Imperial protection now realized that the humans were unstoppable. On board the human ship, there was no hesitation. Sensors could not detect fear, hesitation, or error. Every attack was calculated, every defense perfectly executed. The humans did not panic when their ships were struck, and they did not falter under pressure. They moved with a single purpose: to survive, dominate, and continue their advance. Pilots described them as almost machine-like, yet there was something undeniably human in their efficiency, a reflection of the harsh realities their species had endured. The Empire tried again and again to stop the humans, but every counterattack ended in disaster. Fleets were destroyed, command ships crippled, and officers shaken. The humans' efficiency was unmatched. They exploited every weakness, adapted instantly to every tactic, and left no opportunity for the Empire to recover. The humans were relentless, and their methods had become a nightmare for anyone who opposed them. As the battle continued, the Council faced the undeniable truth. The Empire had been outmatched, not because of lack of technology or numbers, but because the humans fought differently. They were not bound by conventional tactics, not limited by protocol, and not restrained by fear. They were shaped by centuries of survival, battle, and conflict, and they had brought that experience to the galaxy in the form of a single, unstoppable warship. The psychological impact of this realization was profound. Officers who had once been confident now doubted their own abilities. Soldiers who had trained for decades found themselves paralyzed by the humans' precision and ruthlessness. Even the Council, accustomed to commanding fleets with ease, felt helpless. The humans had revealed a fundamental truth: survival, experience, and adaptability could overcome even the most advanced technology and overwhelming force. As the human warship advanced further into Imperial space, destruction spread. Fleets were shattered, planets were prepared for invasion, and fear gripped every corner of the galaxy. The humans were not reckless, they were deliberate. They moved with precision, striking only when necessary, and withdrawing only to strike again with even greater effect. They had mastered a form of warfare that combined physical, mental, and psychological efficiency in ways the Empire had never seen. The Council attempted one last plan, a massive coordinated attack that involved fleets from multiple sectors. They hoped that sheer numbers and synchronized strategy could finally stop the humans. But when the fleets engaged, the humans responded flawlessly. Attacks were anticipated, formations dismantled, and entire fleets destroyed. The humans moved as if they had studied the Empire for centuries, exploiting every weakness and adapting instantly to every tactic. The Council realized, too late, that the humans could not be defeated with conventional warfare. Survivors of the final engagements described scenes of unimaginable chaos. Ships disintegrated under precise strikes, pilots scrambled in terror, and officers watched as their most advanced fleets crumbled. The human warship did not pause, did not hesitate, and did not falter. It moved like a predator, calculating and precise, leaving nothing but fear and destruction in its wake. The humans had become an unstoppable force, and the Empire was powerless to stop them. By the end of the campaign, the Empire's fleets were shattered, colonies were in panic, and confidence had been completely destroyed. The humans had proven that survival, adaptability, and experience could overcome even the most advanced technology and overwhelming numbers. They were not reckless, they were precise, efficient, and relentless. They had shown the galaxy that humans were a force that could not be underestimated, controlled, or intimidated. The humans' warship moved steadily onward, silent and deliberate, leaving the Empire in ruins. It was more than a vessel. It was a symbol of a species that had survived horrors, adapted, and turned that experience into a force unlike any other. The Empire had underestimated the humans for centuries, and the consequences were catastrophic. The humans had arrived, and the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted forever. Even as the Council struggled to regroup, the humans advanced with calm inevitability. There were no negotiations, no pauses, and no retreats. They simply moved forward, carrying the lessons of their past and the efficiency of their species with them. Every encounter left the Empire weaker. Every attack shattered morale, and every battle reinforced the truth. Humans were unstoppable. The galaxy watched in awe and fear as the humans' presence reshaped everything. Citizens whispered of the warship, soldiers trembled at the mention of its name, and officers realized that the humans had not come to negotiate, but to survive and dominate. The Empire's centuries of confidence, control, and power had been shattered, replaced by the terrifying realization that humans had redefined what it meant to be unstoppable. By the time the humans reached the inner systems, the Empire had lost not only fleets, but its sense of invincibility. They understood, finally, that humans were not to be underestimated. They were not just aggressive. They were precise, adaptive, and shaped by the horrors of survival. The humans had brought that experience into space, and it had created a force the Empire could not match. The warship's advance marked the end of the Empire's unquestioned power. Humans had arrived, relentless and unstoppable, and the galaxy would never be the same. Fear, respect, and awe followed in their wake, a reminder that a species shaped by survival could change the course of history forever. The aftermath of the latest battle left the Galactic Empire shaken to its core. Entire fleets had been destroyed, command ships crippled, and the human warship had advanced closer to the inner systems, its presence like a dark shadow over the galaxy. The council convened once more, but this time the tone was not one of strategy or pride, it was fear. Officers and leaders spoke quietly, almost in whispers, as they tried to make sense of what they had witnessed. Reports were terrifying. Pilots who had survived the encounters described the humans' methods as precise, ruthless, and almost inhuman. The humans did not just attack, they studied, adapted, and exploited every weakness with terrifying efficiency. Entire formations that had been considered invincible were destroyed in moments. Some officers began to believe that the human warship was more than a machine, that it carried the very horrors of the humans' past into space, shaping its every movement and decision. The council tried to analyze the humans' tactics. Data from destroyed Imperial ships was pieced together to understand how the humans moved, attacked, and defended. But every pattern they found was either incomplete or deceptive. The humans did not rely solely on brute force. They were flexible, unpredictable, and intelligent in ways that confounded even the Empire's most advanced sensors. Every tactic the Empire tried seemed anticipated, every maneuver countered, every formation dismantled. Citizens across the Empire began to fear the humans in ways that the Council could not control. Colonies near the front lines were on high alert, defensive systems were activated, and people whispered of the humans' terrifying efficiency. Traders avoided the areas completely, fearing even accidental encounters. The humans did not communicate. They did not negotiate, and they did not pause. They simply advanced, and the fear they inspired spread faster than their physical presence. The humans' power was not only in their weapons, it was in the way they fought. Pilots who survived the engagements reported that the humans struck with surgical precision. They targeted command ships first, knowing that disrupting coordination would create chaos. They exploited every vulnerability in the Empire's formations, and they moved with a calmness that suggested experience beyond what anyone could imagine. Every attack was deliberate, every strike calculated, and every retreat perfectly timed. Imperial analysts began to piece together a disturbing picture. The human warship was more than a machine. It was a reflection of humanity itself. It carried the lessons of countless battles fought on their homeworld, battles that had forced humans to survive impossible odds. The ship was a weapon forged from the experiences of a species that had endured starvation, war, and chaos for centuries. Each maneuver, each attack, each defensive action was shaped by survival and adaptation. The Council realized something even more frightening. The humans were not bound by the same rules as other species. While the Empire relied on technology, protocol, and strategy, the humans relied on instinct, adaptability, and experience. Their decisions were not bound by expectations or tradition. They were made in the moment, guided by an unyielding drive to survive and dominate. For the first time in centuries, the Empire faced an enemy that could not be predicted, controlled, or intimidated. The humans' methods were also psychological. Survivors reported feeling as if the warship itself was alive, anticipating every move before it happened. The humans attacked with precision, yes, but they also struck fear into the hearts of those who opposed them. Entire fleets were not just destroyed, they were demoralized. Pilots who survived spoke of dread that paralyzed them in the moment. Of attack, fear that made it impossible to respond effectively. The humans were not just fighting battles, they were teaching lessons, and the message was unmistakable. Underestimate us, and you will fail. Even the Empire's most advanced weapons seemed partially ineffective. Energy beams that had destroyed. Entire fleets in the past barely made a dent in the human warship shields. Missile barrages were intercepted or deflected. Boarding attempts failed before they could even begin. Every action the Empire took seemed anticipated. Every reaction turned against them. The humans had learned to use their enemy's strength and tactics against them, turning every attack into a liability. The Council faced a grim realization. The humans were not only physically superior in battle, they were mentally and psychologically superior as well. They understood warfare in ways the Empire could not match. They adapted in. The human warship was not just a weapon, it was a reflection of a species that had survived. Horrors far beyond what the Empire had experienced as the humans advanced further into Imperial space. The Council began to understand the full scale of the threat. The humans were relentless. They did not pause, they did not hesitate, and they did not retreat. Their attacks were deliberate, their defenses precise, and their efficiency terrifying. Every encounter left the Empire weaker, more disorganized, and more fearful. The humans were not merely a nuisance, they were a force capable of redefining the balance of power in the galaxy. Even the Empire's spies and scouts struggled to gather intelligence. The humans did not communicate, they did not leave patterns that could be studied, and they did not retreat. Every attempt to analyze or predict their actions failed. The humans' adaptability was unmatched, and their efficiency was unparalleled. The Empire was forced to accept that they were facing something entirely new, something that could not be countered with conventional tactics. The psychological impact of the humans' methods extended beyond the battlefield. Citizens and officers alike whispered stories of the humans' precision and ruthlessness. The humans were not just a threat to fleets, they were a threat to confidence, morale, and order. The Empire had always ruled through fear, yet now fear was directed at them. The humans had become a symbol of unstoppable force, a reminder that survival, adaptability, and ruthlessness could overcome even the most advanced technology. The Council continued to study the humans, trying to find any weakness. Analysts pored over every piece of data, every sensor reading, and every fragment of intelligence. But no matter how much they studied, the humans remained unpredictable, adaptable, and efficient. Every tactic devised by the Empire seemed anticipated, every maneuver countered, every fleet dismantled. The humans had created a new form of warfare, one that relied not only on strength and strategy, but on instinct, adaptability, and psychological dominance. Pilots who had survived encounters spoke of the humans as if they were monsters. They described attacks that seemed to anticipate their every move, strikes that targeted critical systems first, and movements that were perfectly timed to exploit weaknesses. Some described the humans' calm demeanor during battle, their efficiency, and their relentless drive. The survivors were haunted by what they had witnessed, knowing that the humans were not just dangerous, they were unstoppable. A council finally admitted what many had feared for some time. The humans were beyond the Empire's understanding. They had underestimated the species for centuries, dismissing them as primitive, limited, and predictable. Yet the humans had proven that survival, adaptability, and experience could create a force that no amount of technology, strategy, or numbers could fully control. The Empire faced a species that had taken the horrors of its past and turned them into a weapon capable of challenging the very foundations of galactic power. As the humans continued their advance, The Empire realized the full extent of the danger. The humans were not merely a fleet, they were a force shaped by experience, hardened by conflict, and capable of exploiting every weakness. They fought with precision, they adapted instantly, and they instilled fear with every move. The human Warship was not just a machine, it was the embodiment of survival, a reflection of a species that had endured horrors no other civilization had faced. By the end of this stage, the Empire was forced to confront a harsh reality. They had underestimated humans for too long, and the consequences were now undeniable. The humans were not reckless, they were deliberate. They were not merely aggressive, they were efficient, adaptable, and terrifyingly effective. Every encounter left fleets crippled, officers shaken, and the council scrambling for answers. The humans had revealed a level of warfare the Empire had never experienced, and they had shown that traditional tactics were meaningless. Against a species that had mastered survival and conflict in ways no one else could imagine, the Empire had learned that humans were not just another species. They were a new kind of force. They did not fight like others, they did not retreat like others, and they did not act like others. They were unpredictable, efficient, and terrifying. Every report, every encounter, and every loss reinforced the same lesson. Underestimate the humans, and you will fail. The Empire's power, confidence, and control were challenged in ways they had never experienced before, and the humans had made it clear that they would not stop. The humans had arrived in the galaxy not as diplomats, not as negotiators, but as a force of survival, efficiency, and destruction. They were shaped by the horrors of their past, hardened by centuries of conflict, and capable of exploiting weaknesses faster than the Empire could adapt. Every battle, every engagement, and every attack was a reminder that the humans were not to be.